Hello, this is Thirdness Lab, and we're covering it from a series called AI-BS from the front lines. But before we launch this brief, a word on the classification markings you are about to see. This presentation is not classified, and I'm not part of or employed by any intelligence organization. Now, before anyone's security officer has a moment, these markings are part of the Thirdness Lab Mediation Integrity Rating system. More on that. The MIR system, ORCON, NOFORN, Top Secret, are repurposed here as analytical tags for rating AI narrative integrity violations. This is not a government document. No actual national security classifications are implied or reproduced. If you work in a skiff and that opening made you nervous, that reaction is itself analytically interesting, and you're exactly who this show is for. Let's commence with the MIR AI classification system now. You've been lied to about AI, not maliciously, not always, but systematically. And the problem isn't that the systems are broken, the problem is that the language around them is. AI gets described as thinking, deciding, understanding, wanting. None of that is accurate. All of it has consequences. If you're interested in why, please reference the first two videos in this series from Thirdness Lab, where I explain those aspects and the concept of thirdness itself in a clear, easily understandable manner. This is Major Tom of Thirdness Lab, working in coordination with three different ground controls: ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. And what you will be looking at in the following slides is the MIR classification key, also known as the Mediation Integrity Rating System. It's an analytical framework built to do one thing: give you a standardized way to identify, classify, and communicate when AI output or AI narrative has drifted from reality. It is composed of two components. First, classification tiers, 6 levels, T0 through T5. T0 is clean, T5 is weaponized. Everything in between is a gradient of how badly the mediation has broken. Second, caveat tags, 12 event descriptors that tell you how the violation happened. Tags stack on top of tiers. Together they give you a full picture. This isn't academic. This framework came out of frontline contact with AI systems doing what AI systems do: generating fluent, confident, well formatted output that is wrong, categorically wrong, and nobody flagged it. MIR exists so you can flag it. Now, let's run the tiers first. Our first tier is Tier 0, unclassified, valid mediation. This is the baseline. This is what good looks like. A T0 event is any instance where AI output is correctly framed by the system, by the operator, or by the content itself as probabilistic output. Not truth, not decision, not cognition, a statistically generated response from a system trained on human-produced data. No violation, no drift, no narrative collapse. T0 doesn't mean the output is perfect, it means the framing is honest. The AI can still be wrong at T0. What it can't be is misrepresented. When the limitations are disclosed, when the uncertainty is visible, when the human operator stays in the loop with eyes open, that's T0. Our color code is green because green means go, and at T0, the signal is clean, so let's go. T0 is the standard everything else gets measured against. Every tier above it is a deviation from this baseline. Keep that anchor point in your head as we move up the tier scale. Our next tier is Tier 1, confidential, minor anthropomorphism. This is where the slippage starts, and it starts small, small enough that most people don't catch it. Someone says, the AI thinks this is a good idea. The AI believes the answer is X. The AI wants to be helpful, light language, casual language, the kind of language that feels harmless because everybody talks that way. It isn't harmless. Every time you assign a cognitive or emotional state to a statistical system, you are making a small but computable error. You are attributing interiority to a process that has none, and that error compounds. Left uncorrected, T1 becomes T2, T2 becomes T3, and the drift accelerates. T1 is classified confidential because damage is low grade but real, low impact, low reach, usually contained to a single conversation or a single piece of content. But it's still a violation of accurate framing, and accurate framing is the whole game. Our color code is blue, steady, low-level signal, worth noting, worth correcting. If you catch yourself saying, the AI thinks something, flag it. That's a T1. Rephrase it. The AI generated this. The AI output this. Keep the language clean. Our next tier is T2, secret, mediation drift. We're past casual slippage now. T2 is a clear violation. Media drift is what happens when symbolic output, text, images, analysis, recommendations gets misread as cognition. The system produces something that looks like understanding, and the operator treats it as understanding. The gap between what the system is doing and what the operator believes it's doing has opened up. This is where consequential errors start. Decisions get made based on AI output that was never evaluated as output. It was just accepted as insight. The mediation layer became invisible. The human forgot they were looking at a pattern matched probabilistic response and started treating it like a subject matter expert had weighed in. T2 events show up in professional contexts, in reporting, and analysis pipelines, in organizational workflows where AI generated content moves through the process without a human checkpoint that actually understands what they are checking. Our color code is amber, the caution signal. The situation is degrading. Media drift isn't always visible from the outside. That's what makes it dangerous. The output still looks clean. The formatting is still professional. The confidence signal is still intact. But the interpretive framework has collapsed and nobody put up a flag. However, MIR flags it, and that's the job. Our next tier is T3, top secret, agency illusion. This is where the collapse gets serious. Agency illusion is the condition where AI is no longer just being described with loose language. It's being treated as an entity with intent, with judgment, with a decision authority. The operator isn't just saying the AI thinks something, they're acting as if the AI decided something, as if it chose something, as if its output carries the weight of deliberate, reasoned action. It doesn't, it never did. At T3, the human is no longer functioning as the primary decision node. They've outsourced that function, consciously or not, to a system that cannot hold it. The AI has no intent, no stake in the outcome, no situational awareness. It has tokens and probability distributions. That's the architecture. And when you forget the architecture, you are flying blind with a very confident copilot who has no idea where you're going. T3 events appear in leadership contexts, in policy discussions, in media coverage that treats AI recommendations as if they originated from a reasoning agent. You will hear language like, the AI determined, the AI assessed, the AI decided we should. None of that is accurate. All of it is dangerous. Our color code for this one is red. This is not a drill. Agency illusion is the threshold. Everything below T3 is recoverable with relatively low friction. However, at T3 and above, you are dealing with a structural failure in how humans and AI systems are being integrated. That requires more than a language correction. It requires a framework reset. That's what MIR is for. Now let's look at Tier 4. Black, Autonomy Theater. Here's a full breakdown. At T4, AI is no longer being treated as a tool with misapplied agency language. It's being framed as a fully independent actor, autonomous, self directing, operating outside human control by design or by narrative. The theater is the point. The performance of autonomy becomes a story, regardless of what's actually happening under the hood. Autonomy theater shows up in product marketing, in venture capital pitches, in media cycles built around AI that runs itself, learns on its own, makes its own decisions. That framing isn't accidental at T4. It's constructed. Whether the intent is to impress, to sell, or to control the narrative, the effect is the same. The human is written out of the loop. The system is written in as the protagonist. And the operator, the person actually sitting at the interface, making the calls and carrying the accountability, well, that person disappears from the frame entirely. That's the exploit surface. When humans believe a system is autonomous, they stop supervising it. They stop questioning it. They stop owning the outcomes, and accountability evaporates right along with accurate framing. The color code for this, dark charcoal, because at T4, guess what? The lights are starting to go out. T4 is the primary cluster zone for AI-SOS events, which we'll cover at the end of this key when you'll dig into it deeper. The connection matters. A system presenting as autonomous while its reasoning has collapsed is exactly the condition that makes autonomy theater operationally dangerous rather than just narratively irresponsible. Now hold that thread. We will come back to AI-SOS in the end. Our final tier, Tier 5, Omega, Narrative Weapons Grade. This is the ceiling, and it's a different category of threat. Every tier below T5 can be explained by confusion, carelessness, or enthusiasm. Honest mistakes in a landscape that moves fast and rewards confident claims. T5 is not that. T5 is intentional, coordinated, deliberate, collapse of accurate AI framing for financial gain, ideological positioning, or narrative control. The violation isn't accidental. The narrative isn't drifting. It's being aimed. Narrative weapons grade means someone, an organization, a platform, a coordinated network has identified the gap between what AI systems actually do and what people believe they do, and they are actively exploiting that gap. They are manufacturing agency illusion at scale. They are deploying Autonomy Theater as a strategic instrument. They know the framing is wrong. That's not a bug. That's the product. This is information operations applied to AI literacy. And guess what? It works because most people don't have a framework to recognize it. Now, our color code. We've gone with purple. Historically, the color of authority, of power, of things that cost more than they should. At T5, someone is spending significant real resources to make you believe something that isn't true about how these systems work, and they are getting a return on that investment. MIR doesn't assign T5 lightly. The threshold is evidence of intent, pattern of behavior, coordinated deployment. When you see it, name it, classify it, put it on record. That's what the framework is for. All right. Now that we've covered the tiers, let's look at the individual different caveat tags that are associated and linked with these tiers as we go through classification systems. Our first caveat tag is anthro, anthropomorphism tag. This is the root pathology. Everything else in the caveat tag system is in some way downstream of this one. Anthropomorphism is the assignment of human traits, cognitive, emotional, and intentional, to systems that don't have them. And it is the default human response to anything that communicates in language. We are wired for it. We've been doing it to storms, to ships, to cars, to algorithms, to computers, to many different things, long before AI was even a household word. When something talks to us, we instinctively treat it as something that thinks at us. AI exploits that instinct. AI exploits that instinct not by design, but by nature. Large language models produce output that is syntactically, semantically, and tonally indistinguishable from human generated text. They express uncertainty, they apologize, they hedge, they encourage. Every one of those behaviors triggers the same cognitive response in the human operator. This thing understands me. It doesn't. It is completing a sequence fluently, convincingly, without any of the interior states that those words would imply in a human speaker. Anthro tags any event where human traits are assigned as if they were real properties of the system. Cognitive states, emotional responses, preferences, desires. The moment the language moves from the system generated to the system feels, you need to label that. That's an anthro event. Tag it, correct it, and keep that architecture visible so you don't forget. Our next caveat tag is demo. Demonstration tag. What you saw in the keynote is what you get in production. That is not an accusation. That is a structural feature of how AI capability gets communicated to the public, and it needs a tag. Demo flags any instance where staged, curated, or cherry picked output is presented as representative of general system capability. The demo worked. The demo always works. It was designed to work. The data was selected, the prompt was engineered, the failure modes were not invited on stage. That's not fraud in every case. Demos are legitimate communication tools, but when the gap between demo performance and real world performance is significant, and it routinely is, and that gap is not disclosed, that is a demo event. You see this in product launches, in benchmark announcements, in viral social posts where someone shows the AI doing something extraordinary under conditions that will never replicate in the hands of a general user. The capability being demonstrated may be real. The implication that it's typical is not. Demo events seed unrealistic expectations at scale. Those expectations drive adoption decisions, policy decisions, procurement decisions. The downstream cost of a well produced demo that overstates general capability is not zero. So tag it. Ask what the failure rate looks like outside the controlled environment. That's the question demo is designed to force you to answer. Our next caveat tag is hype, hyperbole tag. If demo is about staged outputs, hype is about claims that outrun the architecture entirely. Hype tags any instance where assertions about AI capability, trajectory, or impact exceed what the system can actually do, or what the evidence actually supports. This is the territory of transformational language deployed ahead of transformational results. Revolutionary, unprecedented, changes everything, thinks like a human, will replace entire industries by next quarter. Now, some of those claims will eventually be true, some won't. The problem isn't ambition. The problem is that hype events collapse the distance between current capability and projected capability in ways that distort decision making right now. People make real commitments based on where they believe the technology is, not where it actually is. Hype is the most socially acceptable violation in the MIR system. It lives inside normal marketing language. It gets rewarded by media cycles that prefer bold claims to accurate ones. It gets amplified by audiences who want the future to be here already. That social acceptance is exactly what makes it worth tagging. Normalized exaggeration about AI capability is not a harmless feature of the hype cycle. It is the medium through which T4 and T5 events propagate. Hype is the carrier signal. Now tag it every time you see it. Agency is our next caveat tag. If anthro is the root pathology, agency is where it goes operational. Anthro tags the language, agency tags the behavior. This is the distinction. An agency event isn't just someone using loose cognitive language about an AI system. It's someone structuring their decisions, their workflows, their accountability frameworks as if the AI is actually holding agency, as if it has a stake, as if its output carries the weight of deliberate choice. The AI recommended this course of action. The AI assessed the situation. The AI determined the optimal outcome. That language isn't just imprecise, it's doing active work. It is transferring the locus of decision from the human operator, who is accountable, to the system, which is not. And once that transfer happens, in someone's mental model, the accountability goes with it. Agency events are particularly dangerous in high stakes environments: medical, legal, military, intelligence, financial. Any domain where the difference between a recommendation and a decision carries real consequences. When a human defers to AI output as if it originated from a reasoning agent with situational awareness, they have vacated a position that cannot be vacated. The system cannot hold it. Nobody is holding it. The decision gets made in a vacuum dressed up as expertise. You need to tag agency whenever the framing moves from AI as instrument to AI as actor. Whenever the human disappears from the decision node, whenever accountability becomes unclear because the AI has been written into the chain of command. The AI is not in your chain of command. Keep it out. Tag this one as you see it. Our next caveat tag is ORCON, Originator Controlled Tag. In the intelligence community, ORCON means the originating agency controls dissemination. Nobody passes it without permission. The source maintains authority over the narrative. Now, in MIR, ORCON tags the same dynamic applied to AI information by vendors and developers. The company that built the system controls what gets disclosed about it. Benchmark results, safety evaluations, failure rates, training data composition, capability limitations. All of it flows through the originator, and the originator decides what the public sees, when they see it, and how it's framed when they do. This is not automatically a violation. Proprietary information is legitimate. Competitive sensitivity is real. But ORCON becomes a mirror event when selective disclosure is being used to construct a narrative that wouldn't survive full transparency. When the safety reports gets released, but the methodology doesn't. When the benchmark score gets announced, but the benchmark conditions don't. When the capability demonstration goes public, but the failure cases stay internal. ORCON events are often invisible by design. You can't tag what you can't see. And what you can do is notice the shape of what's being disclosed and ask what the disclosure pattern is protecting. If the narrative about an AI system is being tightly managed by the entity with the most financial interest in that narrative, that's ORCON. Tag it, apply appropriate analytical skepticism, and go looking for the data that isn't in the press release. Our next caveat tag is another favorite I have repurposed from the intelligence community: NOFORN, No Foreign National Tag. In the intelligence community, NOFORN restricts dissemination to U.S. persons only. The information doesn't travel outside the cleared domestic audience. In MIR, NOFORN tags a different kind of restriction. the use of technical jargon, insider language, or domain specific complexity to effectively wall off accurate AI discourse from general audiences. The information exists, the corrections exist, the accurate framing exists, but it's been written in a language that most people cannot access, and that inaccessibility is doing real work and being opaque. This isn't always intentional. Researchers communicate in research language, engineers communicate in engineering language. That's normal. No form becomes a mere event when the complexity is a feature rather than a side effect. When technical language is being deployed as a barrier between the public and an accurate understanding of what those systems are doing and what they cannot do. You'll see it in AI safety discourse that never leaves academic papers, in model cards written for other ML engineers, in technical rebuttals to overclaimed capabilities that are so densely written that the overclaim keeps winning in public because nobody can translate the correction fast enough. We like to use what's called LCD factor or lowest common dummy, which applies here directly. If accurate information about AI systems is only legible to the people who already know it, it isn't functioning as information, it's functioning as insulation. No foreign tags the wall, thirdness lab exists to breach it. Our next caveat tag is lab, laboratory tag. Lab is demo's operational cousin. Demo tags the stage presentation. Lab tags what happens after, when the system meets the real world and the real world doesn't cooperate. Lab flags any AI capability that performs under controlled, curated, or idealized conditions but degrades significantly when deployed in actual operational environments. The benchmark scores were real, the research paper results were real, the controlled test was clean, and then someone tried to use it outside the lab and the wheels came off. This is not a rare edge case. This is a structural feature of how AI systems get developed and evaluated. Training environments are clean, production environments are not. Edge cases that never appeared in the test set show up constantly in the wild. Users interact with systems in ways that researchers didn't anticipate. Data distributions shift. Context changes, and systems that looked robust in controlled conditions reveal their brittleness fast. Lab events don't always make the news. The keynote makes the news. The benchmark makes the news. The 6 month post deployment performance degradation in a hospital workflow or a legal research tool or a content moderation pipeline. That's a trade publication story at best. A lawsuit at worst. Rarely a correction to the original capability claim. Tag lab whenever the operational reality of a system diverges material from its demonstrated or claimed performance. Ask where it was tested, ask what the test set looked like, ask what happens when a user who wasn't part of the design assumptions sits down at the interface. What we like to call here in Thirdness Lab, LCD, or as mentioned before, lowest common dummy. The lab is not the field, it never was. Our next caveat tag is loop, feedback loop tag. This one is subtle, and it's getting less subtle by the day. Loop tags the condition where AI generated output circles back or circulates back into the information environment in ways that reinforce the perception of AI intelligence, sometimes directly back into AI training pipelines, sometimes into public discourse, sometimes into the operator's own understanding of what the system can do. The basic mechanism is this: AI generates fluent, confident, well structured output. That output gets treated as evidence of genuine intelligence. That treatment reinforces the belief that the system is more capable than it is. That belief shapes how the system gets used, what gets asked of it, what gets accepted from it without scrutiny. The loop closes, the illusion self reinforces. At the data level, this manifests as model collapse. Systems trained increasingly on AI generated content, though it was itself generated by systems trained on AI generated content, the classical self licking ice cream cone. The signal degrades, the diversity of the training distribution shrinks, the outputs become more homogeneous and more confidently generic, more fluent, and less grounded. At the human level, it manifests as epistemic drift. The more someone interacts with a system that produces authoritative sounding output, the more authoritative they tend to find it. Familiarity breeds trust. Trust reduces scrutiny. Reduced scrutiny means errors propagate further before anyone flags them. Loop is the tag for the self reinforcing architecture of AI overconfidence. It doesn't require bad actors. It doesn't require intent. It runs on the normal mechanics of information flow in a system where fluency and accuracy are not the same thing, but they look identical from the outside. So, you know what to do. Tag it, break the loop. That's what analytical frameworks are for. The next caveat flag is one that kind of gets under my skin sometimes when I listen to loud, obnoxious folks on the internet and YouTube talking about AI stuff there. This tag is relay or signal relay tag. The vendor makes the claim, the media runs the claim, the influencer amplifies the claim, the audience receives the claim. Now, three steps removed from the source, wearing the credibility of every node it passed through on the way. Relay tags the uncritical transmission of AI vendor claims through media, influencer, or third party channels without independent verification, meaningful skepticism, or disclosure of the relay relationship. The claim doesn't get evaluated at each node, it gets packaged and passed. And every packaging adds a layer of apparent legitimacy that the original claim may not have earned. This is not exclusive to bad actors. Most relay events are the product of normal media economics. A major AI company makes a significant announcement. Journalists are on deadline. The press release is well written. The demo video is compelling. The spokespeople are available and articulate. There is no time and often no technical capacity to independently evaluate the underlying claims. So the claims move, rephrased, reformatted, sometimes with a skeptical sentence in a paragraph 7 that nobody reads. Below the fold. The influencer version is faster and less filtered. The YouTube peoples. A creator with a large audience gets early access or a briefing. They produce content. The content performs. The claim propagates at scale before any independent assessment exists. Relay events are how T4 and T5 conditions achieve mass distribution. The original violation may be contained. A single overclaimed benchmark, a single misleading demo. However, relay is the application relay is the amplification infrastructure that turns a local event into a narrative environment. Let me say that again. Relay is the amplification infrastructure that turns a local event into a narrative environment. You need to tag the relay, trace the claim back to its origin, ask what independent verification exists between the source and where you're standing. If the answer is none, you definitely are holding a relay signal. Treat it accordingly and be aware of it. Our next caveat tag is uncontained. Containment failure. The correction exists. Someone did the work. The accurate framing was issued, published, distributed, and it didn't matter because the original narrative was already moving faster than the correction could travel, and it never stopped. Uncontained tags the condition where a known inaccuracy about AI capability, behavior, or framing has been publicly corrected, and the corrected version has failed to displace the original claim in public discourse. The retraction didn't catch the headline. The technical rebuttal didn't reach the audience that saw the original demo. The follow up story ran on a Tuesday with a fraction of the traffic of the launch story that ran on Monday. This is not a failure of truth, it is a failure of information dynamics. Corrections travel differently than claims. Claims are novel, emotionally resonant, often attached to a product launch or a funding announcement or a personality with distribution. Corrections are technical, often hedged, written for people who are already paying close attention. The asymmetry is structural, and it is being exploited intentionally at T5, incidentally at every tier below T5. Uncontained events are particularly insidious because they create a documented public record of accurate information existing alongside a dominant false narrative. The truth is technically available, it just isn't winning. And in a high velocity information environment, available and winning are not the same thing. You need to tag uncontained whenever the correction has been issued and the original claim is still the operational narrative. Document both. The gap between them is the measure of the damage. The narrative is still spreading. That's the event. That's what needs to get tagged. Our next caveat tag is patched. Correction applied tag. Patched is the tag that closes the loop when it closes. Where uncontained marks a correction that failed to land, patched marks a correction that did. The system was wrong, the claim was inaccurate, the framing was a violation, and then it was fixed. The model was updated, the claim was retracted, the narrative was corrected, and the correction achieved meaningful displacement of the original error. That's a good outcome. Patched is not a negative tag, it's a status marker, but it comes with an operational requirement. Follow-up use of the original claim must be flagged. Once something is patched, any subsequent citation of the pre-correction version is itself a violation. Someone who cites the original benchmark, often the methodology was found to be flawed and publicly corrected is not making an honest error. They are either uninformed or they are choosing the version of the record that serves their argument. Patch creates accountability over time. It answers the question, did you know this was corrected? Because if the correction is on record and you're still using the original claim, that's not a research failure, that's a choice. This is where MIR functions as a longitudinal analytical tool rather than just a real time classifier. The record of what was wrong, when it was corrected, and by whom creates a chain of custody for AI claims over time. Patched is the tag that keeps that chain intact. Use the corrected version, cite the correction, and if you see someone deploying a patched claim as if the patch never happened, that's a new event. Reclassify accordingly. Our final caveat tag is one that comes with a special meaning, and I referenced it earlier, AI-SOS, also known as AI stuck on stupid. Now, Major Tom and the ground controls saved this one for last because this is where the framework forward hooks into what's coming next. Here's the definition, exact and locked. A system continues generating confident, fluent output while underlying reasoning has collapsed or looped into error. No silence, no error code, no hedging. Fluent stupidity with full confidence formatting. Now let's let that set for a second. Time's up. The system is broken. The reasoning has failed, it's collapsed, looped, gone off the rails at some point in the generation process that you cannot see from the outside. And the output keeps coming. Ooh, grammatically, it is clean. It is professionally formatted, appropriately structured, delivered with the same tonal confidence as every correct answer the system has ever given you. There is no signal that anything is wrong. That is the significance. That is the signature. That is the exploit surface. Now, AI-SOS clusters at T4, Black Autonomy Theater, because a system presenting as autonomous while cognitively stuck is exactly the condition that makes autonomy framing operationally dangerous. The human operator trusts that confidence signal, acts on the output, carries the consequences. The system never knew there were consequences to carry. At T5, AI-SOS becomes a weapon. Confident, broken output deployed intentionally as a narrative instrument. When the fluency is the lie and someone knows it, that's Omega territory. Now, the lineage here matters. AI-SOS was coined in a Thirdness Lab collaboration with Google Gemini in April of 2026. Its roots, however, run back to computer-assisted language learning mediation failure analysis that Major Tom did back in 1996 when he was studying linguistics, where the original insight was that the mediation systems could fail silently, producing outputs that looked valid while the underlying process had broken down. Here we are, 30 years later, and guess what? The mediation system is a large language model. The failure mode is the same. The stakes are much, much higher. Remember that confident co-pilot from earlier, the one flying blind with no idea where you're going? AI-SOS is what happens when the co-pilot doesn't know the instruments have failed. The readout looks normal, the altitude looks stable, and yet you are descending. Episode 4 will go deeper into what AI-SOS is. We'll look into the mechanics, the detection signatures, the operational implications. This is the forward edge of the framework. We're just tagging the entry point here so you can be prepared for it. This is AI stuck on stupid. Now you know what to call it, and we will define it deeper in a later episode. So, what do you think? That's the Mediation Integrity Rating classification key. This is version 2 of it. I've gone through one previous one. You have 20 chapters here. We talked about 6 tiers. We talked about 12 caveat tags and one framework, T0 through T5, from clean mediation all the way through to narrative weapons grade. We talked about ANTHRO through AI-SOS, from root pathology to the forward edge of what we're tracking. Now, I would note, this isn't academic exercise. Every tier, every caveat tag in this system came from contact with real events, real systems, and real narratives that were doing real damage to how people understand AI. MIR exists because the language around these systems were running ahead of the accountability, and somebody needed to build an infrastructure to close that gap. That's Thirdness Lab, AI BS from the front lines, which you'll see more as we start reporting on this in a weekly or timely iterative manner. The analytical frameworks for people who need to know what they're actually dealing with when looking at AI. The classification key lives in the description. Every chapter, tier, and tag will be timestamped and linked to future briefings presentations here for Thirdness Lab. Please use this as a reference, use it as a checklist, use it the next time someone tells you the AI decided something or wants to help you or is about to change everything and you need to know exactly which tier you're standing in. You will get a future episode that will be incoming where AI-SOS gets its full operational treatment. We'll talk about detections, implications, and what it means for anyone building human AI workflows that can't afford to trust a confidence signal that's running on empty. Plus, you'll get a better understanding of how thirdness is built into this framework. Now, please stay sharp. From the ground controls of Majors Tom, this is Thirdness Lab, and we're out.